Howdy everybody out there. This is Go Figure News. I am TJ and today we have nothing to review. Wah wah. We're doing something completely different, but we thought it was necessary. Back at the new year, we did an article, hashtag the new Beanie Baby, all about the Funko Pop Bubble. And if you don't know the story of how I got into collecting again in general, it was because there was a little cherry dangling out there in the world, and that was, I heard that there were going to be these little vinyl figures of characters from the Planet of the Apes. Now, it was a fire starter for me because I had not collected anything in the toy universe since I was about this tall. And I thought to myself, okay, let's assess the situation. I'm now 50. I grew up in the era of Mego and Kenner. I was focused solely at that time on Planet of the Apes and the various sets. And the apes themselves fascinated me. The idea that apes could turn into adversaries of humans after war between them and us, and they were talking apes, and then the evolution devolution would start over and tumble backwards, and they were talking apes, and then the evolution devolution would start over and tumble backwards. Over the years, you've seen hundreds and hundreds of thousands of DC figures and Marvel figures, comic book figures of all sorts. But there haven't been that many in the world of the Planet of the Apes. There have been lots of collectibles, and of course you can go online and see people's amazing collections behind glass, you know, people who have the original masks, people who have props from the films. I don't have quite the pocketbook or even the pocket plastic to be able to wax and wane a collection like that. So when I first started to collect again, it was because I saw these figures being teased on the internet. That wasn't the earliest days of Funko. It was pretty much the new wave when its new owner stepped in and decided to up the ante and pretty much buy up every single license in the known universe. But I thought to myself, this is pretty cool. You know, here they have something that relates to my history, and around that I created a channel called Funkorific, and it was a Tumblr blog, and it was hugely popular, and we had people from all walks of everywhere, from in many different countries, and people writing in, and it was fun to do for a while. But at the same time, I was amassing this huge collection of Funko figures that I was running hither and to, from 7-Eleven to Amazon to Barnes & Noble. And then once Funko started to expand into Walmart and Hot Topic, and now of course you can find them in furniture stores and convenience stores. No matter where you go, you are inundated by these cutesy, bug-eyed 3.5, 4-inch figures. You know, they're out there and they are in full force. But just as Beanie Babies came and went in the flash of a span of maybe say 5 years, Funko has definitely gone over their hoop, and they're definitely declining. Now, maybe not in sales, maybe not in dollars, but in terms of toy makers, people are starting to see through the allure. I've had my own personal experiences with Funko. At first, it was not a very good experience. All along the entire way of running my blog, They were not resourceful, they were not responsive, and their PR team was actually a little bit of a PITA, just to put it bluntly. Look it up on Urban Dictionary. Eventually, I needed to veer away from Funko if I was going to create a website dedicated to toys and toy makers and collectors, something for someone like me on the other side. So I was creating it for like-minded collectors, people who were adult collectors who might be getting back into collecting after 30, 40 years for some people. Now I'm noticing that going to toy shows, talking to people online from all over the world, that in fact many of the people that are actually buying up a lot of these toys and amassing these massive collections I'm noticing a trend that people just don't have that much spare income. And of course, as that happens, many people buy to sell on eBay or various secondary markets, or buy them as sort of principally thinking that their value is going to go up. When in essence, no matter if it is something that you paid $8 for or you paid $800 for, it's exactly the same thing when it really comes down to it. It's the same piece of vinyl that comes in a box and speaks to you on some level. It's colorful, it's metallic, it's shiny, what have you. And then eventually, when I evolved into creating Go Figure News, and I realized that I was only one of a collective of people out there creating sort of more journalism, so to speak, because that's my background. I'm coming from a journalism background, having written in the arts and in the fields of music and culture. Once my collection of Funko Pops alone amassed to almost 1,200, I realized, well, you know what? I don't even have the space to put these anymore, let alone my artwork. My studio space became sort of more of a storage space. Now, that alone should have set off enough warning signs. But when I started Go Figure News, I realized I was going to change my own personal perception of how I was going to approach it. And I want to show a couple of clips of some folks ruminating. Let's have a look at what some other people are thinking about these days.
Guys, Funko does not care about you. They don't care about you. All they're doing is money grabbing, and the money grabbing has gotten to an all-time high right now.
So basically, getting back to when I started Go Figure News, I realized, okay, here I have this huge collection of all these cutesy little figures, and of them, probably the only set that I was trying to complete were my Star Wars set, because I had never had the Star Wars figures from Kenner or from Hasbro or from Mattel or from whomever would create them over the years. And then I realized, okay, that's never going to happen. Now, the price point is what grabs people, and I think that was the magical, mystical note that Funko played. Well, after they got bought out by the company that does thermoses and all, and became a kind of an international merger with a corporation, people started to see that they were starting to produce mugs and t-shirts and their mystery boxes and multiple different kinds of minis and socks, and there were so many things that were coming out and still coming out that I definitely got a clue. I started to get a really, really bad taste. Eventually, when I was doing Go Figure News and I reached out to their press team, they didn't fully embrace me right away, but they were interested in what I was doing as a site, as a channel, mainly because they realized that I am seen in 152 countries. But I would say they realized that there were people out there that were making a contribution that wasn't necessarily community based, but that could actually generate some dollars or something to that effect. Well, they sent me some things to review, and I realized that they were completely not interested in sending, for instance, any pops. That was something that they just declared clearly that they weren't going to send, and so they sent me their other lines like Reaction and their action figure series, and both of which I think are starting to dissipate. The only place where I have pause with Funko is, in fact, when it comes to, when they take risks, which I thought they did with Hikari, although the risk that they didn't take was watching how the market would absorb some, like a Japanese Sofubi toy for their already developed market of people that wanted to purchase something in mass at a price point around $8 to $10. So selling something for $40 to $90 was out of the question for most collectors, especially younger collectors. Long story short, I had written some type of a review, and when you do a review, I'm not being paid by the company. As a critic, you need to be as unbiased, but as clear and as honest as you think you can be when you're looking at a toy. So they disagreed with something, and they basically wanted to rewrite my review, and I just clearly put it to them where I am not creating commercials for you. If you want me to do something like that, well, you're gonna have to pay me, some percentage of what your sales are, and that ain't gonna happen. So it actually made it rubbed me the wrong way for sure. Then I heard from another toy maker that they were putting out figures in their Pop Asia line, and that were registered, trademarked, or copyrighted, I'm not sure which, to figures that he had done, which I had also reviewed, which I loved, by the way, and those were the Hopping Ghosts. And when I heard what went on between the two, I realized that the person that was making the designer toys, what was being said about Funko started to ring truer and truer. And also, after hearing about several mom and pop brick and mortar stores that generally sell designer toys, limited edition, one of a kind, unique pieces, when those stores start to go out of business, when Atama in Dallas went out of business, when Rotofuji was running against some fiscal issues, when Suburban Vinyl in New Jersey closed, I realized that a part of that larger system is supported by what's flowing in and out of the market, so to speak. And of course, when you think about this, when you really think about the common denominator here is how much disposable income are we able to use on things that we see that have a certain level of value. And what is value? That's the larger ethical question. And then I realized that Funko, really was starting to look kind of superfluous to me as a market that would come and go, where a bunch of people would make a lot of money, and then the people behind the scenes, the designers, the creatives, the meaningful root of why people are so interested in these things would be looking for jobs. Now, that makes me angry, and that would make anybody angry if they really thought about sort of the American way aspect of that. Without further ado, I'm going to run to another clip of someone else who recently is having something to say about Funko.
This is the thing about bubbles. This is how you define. When more people get into it as speculation versus enjoying it, you officially have a bubble. And then you have to answer. I'm not an expert at this. If people out there collect these, are there more speculators in it right now than people that are into it to enjoy it? And once you get that tipping point, that's when it's going to fail. Because that's what happened with baseball cards in the 90s. That's what happened with comics in the 90s. That's what happened with Beanie Babies. When you have more people getting into it, just thinking I'm going to get rich off it. When you have everyone thinking you're going to get rich off of something, and you have no one going to buy it after the prices get pumped up artificially, you have basically like a pyramid scheme, you're going to find the final idiot then who has a worthless thing they spent $1,000 on a Beanie Baby, and then everyone says, why is that worth anything? People are spending money on all this shit, and most of this is going to be thrown out.
Yep.
And I'm not anti-consumerism at all, but it just hit me that was sort of like my, not epiphany, because I kind of, I realized some of this stuff, but it was sort of like in front of my eyes, like, this is all fucking garbage. This is all plastic shit we are buying that leads to nowhere. At least these, you can play these.
Yeah.
No one's playing with the fucking pop figure. I mean, there's always going to be exceptions, but do you need 100 pop figures lining your fucking wall?
No, because they all look the fucking same.
So there will be a bubble. It will burst. Just a matter of when.
Yep.
So in closing, all I want to share is that I honestly, there are a handful of things that I think that the company has produced that are really cool, and I just wish that there was some modicum of balance between what the company produces and really to consider the future of plastic and vinyl being in a dump somewhere, just collecting and amassing, because that's very saddening when you think about it. I just learned the other day that the Mighty Mugs that may have in some cases been predecessors from Hasbro of all companies of the Funko Pop were actually made of recycled materials. Did you know that? I didn't know that. A little bit of trivia for you today. So I was really happy to hear that. But still, when you make products in large unknown quantities, ship them internationally, sell them for really low price, eventually all of that goes somewhere. We have learned from our habitual spending habits. Thank you so much for watching. I know today seems like a little bit of a little different. Maybe you'll call it a rant. Hopefully I'm landing on receptive ears rather than other. But please, type away your ideas, your comments, your thoughts, not just necessarily about Funko. Maybe there's another company out there where you've seen the same thing happen before. And remember to subscribe wherever it is. And I'll see you next time right here on Go Figure News.